The first 15 years of Pixar's filmography is widely considered to be one of the most legendary artistic runs in cinematic history. And rightfully so. The level of consistency at which they managed to conceive and create all of the iconic and beloved properties that make up the dozen movies at the start of their catalog is an unparalleled achievement in the medium of animation. However, it seems that Pixar's sophomore project is often overlooked in comparison to the drop-dead classics that surround it. 1998's A Bug's Life was the worst performing release at the box office out of their first 15 movies, and I can't help but feel that its relatively unremarkable reputation is somewhat undeserved. Granted, the original Toy Story is one tough act to follow given how flawlessly paced it is, but I think John Lasseter did an excellent job recapturing the magic of that first film by taking the unique setting of an ant colony and equipping it with an equally compelling story. I think the main problem that people have with this movie is the way they executed the second act low point. A common criticism about this scene is that it comes across as contrived, since Flick's dishonesty doesn't really have any effect on their ability to follow through with their defense strategy against the grasshoppers. And while I agree that they would technically be able to continue with the plan, I don't think it's contrived at all, because at the end of the day, Flick lied to them. It makes total sense, at least to me, that they felt so betrayed by this, especially after establishing the cultural importance of collective teamwork in their colony. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think this movie is perfect. I'm personally of the opinion that the expository section near the beginning with all the circus shenanigans actually drags for a bit too long, and I've always thought that this scene with Dot was kind of shoehorned in as a cheap callback rather than the emotional full circle moment that it was supposed to be.
Pretend it's a seed, okay?
Okay.
What I do think is perfect, though, is the speech that Hopper gives to his cloud of underlings at their hideout. I do not exaggerate when I say that this one sequence of dialogue single-handedly contextualizes Hopper's entire motivation in a reveal that's both surprising and believable in the most brilliant, tightly constructed villain monologue I have ever witnessed. And it all starts at the very first shot of the scene, panning down to reveal two grasshoppers, one of them zealously cruising across a muddy desert oasis, and the other lazing upon a leaf, floating in the very same pool of water. And already this pair of establishing shots immediately communicates a couple of crucial pieces of information to the audience. One, the grasshoppers' hideout is in the desert, which implies that they would have to travel a non-trivial distance to get to the grassy terrain of the ant colony. And two, the relaxed and recreational behavior of the grasshoppers seems to indicate a distinct lack of urgency, which flies in the face of Hopper's initial claims that they're desperate to survive through the winter. When they visit Ant Island at the beginning of the movie, Hopper would have you believe that even with the ants' food offerings, they're barely scraping by as it is. But now that we're seeing them in their natural habitat, throwing mosquito darts and lounging in the sun, we start to realize that not only is their mistreatment of the ants tyrannical, but it's also deceptively manipulative. In fact, they seem to have accumulated so much food through their manipulation of the ants that they could easily get by without them for the next year, a fact which two of the grasshoppers, Axel and Loco, use to justify their suggestion to Hopper that they don't even bother going back to Ant Island at all because it's too much of a risk to fly all that distance under the threat of rainfall. And at first, Hopper seems surprisingly receptive to this idea. But sure enough, we quickly realize that his uncharacteristic admission was too good to be true, as he facetiously plays along with his lackeys. He pretends to have second thoughts about Flick standing up to him back at Ant Island, but Axel and Loco flippantly dismiss this concern because, well, he's just one ant. What could a puny little ant possibly do? I mean, if we pretend that this grain is an ant. Now, humor me, will you? Just humor me for a second. If we pretend this little grain right here is an ant, did that hurt? Well, surely not. What about this? Yeah, not even a scratch, right? Okay, how about this? I stopped the footage right before Hopper begins his monologue. And I'm not going to show it to you, because everything he says from this moment on has already been expressed in this single gesture. There are exactly 5 key takeaways from Hopper's speech, and believe it or not, the simple act of unleashing these grains onto Loco and Axel conveys all 5 of them in one fell swoop. Let's break it down, shall we? Takeaway number 1. If we let one ant stand up to us, they all might stand up. When Hopper throws the grain, all of a sudden he's hit with a second grain, and then soon enough, the entire batch comes tumbling down on them. This is symbolic of the classic mob mentality. If one person decides to take a stand, then another one jumps on the bandwagon, which then inspires everyone to jump in after them. Takeaway number 2. The ants outnumber the grasshoppers 100 to 1. This one's pretty simple. Look at the number of grains. Takeaway number 3. If the ants ever figure out the fact that they outnumber the grasshoppers 100 to 1, the grasshoppers are cooked. This is also very simple. Axel and Loco are dead as fuck. Takeaway number 4. Surviving through the winter should actually be the least of the grasshoppers' worries. It was never about the food. It's always been about keeping the ants in line. Why else do you think Hopper was willing to waste all those grains just to make a point? And finally, takeaway number 5. If anyone else wants to stay at the hideout instead of going to Ant Island, he will not hesitate to do to them what he did to Axel and Loco. The bottom line is that Hopper is a truly authoritarian leader that rules with an iron fist, and this scene goes to show just how shrewdly menacing he really is. Also, the pile of grains acts as a higher platform for him to stand on, which is a neat little touch as well. All in all, this monologue, and the entire scene that leads up to it for that matter, is absolutely genius. And it greatly contributes to A Bug's Life being, by my estimation, one of the several underrated gems in the Pixar canon. Like I said before, it's not quite perfect, but I would venture to say that it has just as much heart and creative whimsy as most of the other films in this era of the studio's history, as well as a moral theme that's right up there with the best of them. Indeed, through the power of innovation coupled with inspiration, all it takes is one puny little ant to move the earth. I stopped the footage right before Hopper begins his monologue, and I'm not going to show it to you because I refuse to lose a 7th channel to copyright strikes. I stopped the footage right before Hopper begins his monologue, and I'm not going to show it to you because I shudder to think what might happen if it falls into the wrong hands. I stopped the footage right before Hopper begins his monologue, and I'm not going to show it to you because it makes me a little hot and bothered, and I don't want to expose that side of myself to you guys.